If your delivery app tells you to pick up a passenger at a location that doesn't exist on the map, cancel the ride, because I didn't. And now, every time I look in my rearview mirror, I'm not sure if this happened in November of 2024. I was driving for a popular rideshare app in Seattle. It was one of those bone-chilling rainy nights where the fog is so thick you can't see the hood of your own car. I was about to sign off when a priority request flashed on my screen. That's a trap. To pick up the GPS led me away from the city lights and toward the old industrial shipping yards. As I drove, what got further apart until I stopped entirely. The blue line on my phone was pointing toward a collapsed pier, sound of the Pacific Ocean slamming against the wood. I pulled over, ready to hit cancel, but the app chimed. But then, the rear driver's side of my car dipped. With a shock's hissed, the door didn't open. The back seat was empty. No one was there. I figured the app was bugged and the heater in the car died. Second, I could see my breath. And then, I noticed the smell. It was the smell of old, stagnant seawater. Wet wool. I looked in the rearview mirror to check the back seat again. It was empty. But when I looked back at the road, I saw a hand. A pale, gray hand resting on the center console right next. It wasn't there in the air. It was like a shadow cast on the plastic, but it had texture. It had fingernails, and they were blue. The video feed, I slammed on the brakes. I grabbed my phone to end the trip, but the screen was frozen. It wasn't showing the map anymore. It was showing a camera feed from inside my own car. A perspective from the top corner, well, the windshield, looking down at me. I wasn't alone. Sitting in the back seat was a man. His hair was matted to his forehead. And his eyes, they weren't eyes. They were just dark, wet bits. In the video feed, he was leaning forward, his face inches from my ear. But when I turned my head to look at the actual seat, nothing. The climax, I tried to scream, but my throat felt like it was filled with salt. Then, the car's Bluetooth speakers clicked on. There was no music, just the sound of heavy, wet breathing, left in the light a voice whisper. It didn't sound like it came from the speakers. It sounded like it came from inside my own skull. I looked at the map. There was no light. There was just a concrete wall at the end of the pier. I said, left. The voice growled. Suddenly, the steering wheel jerked. I wasn't driving anymore. The car was accelerating toward the edge of the pier. I hammered on the brakes, but the pedal went flat to the floor. We were going 60, 70, 80 miles per hour toward the Blackwater. The twist right before we hit the edge. The road flipped. Like a frame skipped in a movie gone suddenly. I was back on the main highway. The city lights were back. The heater kicked on. The smell of seawater was gone. I let out a sob of relief, thinking the nightmare was over. I pulled over into a gas station, my hands shaking so hard I could barely steer. I checked the app. The trip was over. Earned $200. I got out of the car needing air. I walked to the back door and opened it, just to prove to myself no one was there. The seat was dry. No wet wool, no gray hands. But then I saw it, on the back of my driver's seat, right where a passenger's head would rest. There was a damp, salt-stained patch in the shape of a human face, and on the floor mat, a single, rusted brass button from a sailor's coat. The closing, I quit. That night, I deleted the app and sold the car. I thought I was safe. But a week ago, I got a notification on my new phone. A different app. A food delivery service I'd never even downloaded. The notification said, your order is outside. I live on the 14th floor, I don't have a balcony. I looked at the driver info, there was no photo, just a name, the passenger. And when I looked in the mirror in my hallway, I didn't see my reflection. I saw a man in a wet overcoat, standing right behind me, holding a rusted brass button. He smiled, and his mouth was full of seawater.
The hook: if your car's backup camera shows a person sitting in your back seat, but when you turn around, the car is empty, do not look back at the screen. Keep your eyes on the road and pray you reach a crowded area before the sensors chime. Because what happened to me in October of 2025 wasn't a glitch. It was an invitation. The setup: I've been a delivery driver in Chicago for 3 years. I usually stick to the day shift. But the surge pricing on a rainy Tuesday night was too good to pass up. I was driving a brand new SUV, the kind with sensors for everything. Lane assist, blind spot monitoring, and a high-definition 360-degree camera system. Around 11:30 p.m., I finished a drop-off in a quiet, upscale neighborhood near the lake. The streets were lined with massive oak trees that blocked out the streetlights, making the fog look like a solid wall. I put the car in reverse to back out of a long, narrow driveway. The first anomaly. That's when the sensors started screaming, beep, beep, beep. The emergency braking system slammed the car to a halt. I looked at the backup camera screen. In the high-def night vision, there was someone standing directly behind my car. A tall, thin figure wearing a yellow raincoat. They were just standing there, completely still. I leaned out the window to tell them to move, but the driveway was empty. No yellow raincoat, no person, just wet pavement and fog. I shook it off, thinking the rain had tripped the sensors. I shifted into drive and started heading toward the main road. The intrusion, mile down the road. The rear seat reminder flashed on my dashboard. It's that little chime that tells you left something in the back. I ignored it. Then, the passenger seatbelt light for the rear middle seat turned red. The car thought someone was sitting there. Someone heavy. I looked in my physical rear view. Mirror empty. I even reached back and swiped my hand through the air. Nothing but cold leather. I laughed, calling it a software bug. But my heart was already starting to hammer against my ribs. Then, I glanced at the center console screen, the one that shows the 360-degree bird's eye view of the car dot in the digital rendering of the cabin. There was a white wireframe figure sitting in the middle of my back seat. On the screen, the figure was leaning forward, its digital head resting right on the edge of the driver's seat, right next to my neck. The escalation, I tried to pull over, but the car's lane keep assist fought me. The steering wheel jerked in my hands, forcing me to stay in the center of the lane. Every time I tried to hit the brakes, the collision avoidance system kicked in, accelerating the car as if it thought I was about to be rear-ended. The car was taking control. The Bluetooth clicked on. I didn't have my phone connected. The speakers emitted a low-frequency hum, the kind that makes your teeth ache. And then, a voice came through. It wasn't a human voice. It was the text-to-speech voice used by the navigation app. But it was stuttering. RR rerouting. DD destination. The bottom. I looked at the GPS. The map had turned black. No streets, no landmarks. Just a single red line pointing toward the Lake Michigan shoreline, specifically a pier that had been closed for construction for years. The unveiling, I was terrified. I pulled out my phone to call 911, but the screen was just a mirror of the car's backup camera. On my phone screen, I could see the back seat clearly. The person in the yellow raincoat wasn't a person. The face was wrong. It looked like a low-resolution texture that hadn't finished loading. A smudged features, a mouth that was just a black slit, and eyes that were nothing but glowing blue pixels. It reached out. On the screen, I saw its digital fingers wrap around my throat. In real life, I felt a sudden, crushing pressure on my windpipe. I couldn't breathe. I was gasping, pulling at the air, but there was nothing to grab. My car was now doing 90 miles per hour, the engine roaring, the sensor screaming beep 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 in a continuous, deafening loop. The climax, object detected in path. The car chirped. I saw the end of the road. The barricades for the pier were coming up fast. I knew if I hit the water, I was dead, with the last of my strength. I didn't grab the wheel, I grabbed the charging cable for my phone and ripped it out of the USB port. Then, I slammed my fist into the center console screen, shattering the glass. The speakers let out a digital shriek which shattered my eardrums. The car died instantly. The lights, the engine, the sensors, everything went black. The SUV skidded, slamming through the wooden barricades and stopping just feet from the edge of the pier. The aftermath. I sat there in the dark for a long time, the only sound being the rain hitting the roof. When I finally found the courage to look at the back seat, it was empty. I walked 3 miles to the nearest gas station. When I finally got my phone to turn back on, I checked my delivery history. The last trip wasn't there, but I had a new notification from the system update log of my car's app. It said, hardware sync complete, passenger profile saved. I sold that car the next day. I don't drive for apps anymore, but sometimes, when I'm walking past a modern car, the kind with all the cameras and sensors, I see the little blind spotlight on the side mirror flicker. And I know, it's not looking for another car. It's looking at me.